For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of a sort of pitching / tutorial video about how you're going to pitch the Dometic Residence Air Stay full awning. So we'll kind of walk you through the process, go through step by step, explain everything as we go and the reasons why you do certain things in a certain order, and certainly other things to kind of help you rather than hinder you in the whole kind of pitching process. Now, the whole thing can be sort of done by one person really enough. The only issue you find is the tricky part is when it comes to feeding it into the rail itself. But for the purposes of the video, we'll have a go on our own, but we will have a little helping hand just that last part on the rail, mainly just because it's the weight going into the rail. This is the tricky part. Now, one of the things to bear in mind is you can obviously remove the front and the side panels itself, just to make it that much easier getting it into the rail as you need to. Or actually, the less weight you've got to pull through, the easier it naturally should become. What I would recommend doing really is, if you've got some flooring, carpet, or the footprint, for example, is laying that down first before unraveling it. Admittedly, I'm not going to do that. Just purposely, I'm going to pitch this awning, take it back down again. But if you're kind of opening up and dragging it around, if it's wet, muddy, or even if it's on hard standing, you don't want to be pulling it and obviously chance of sort of skegging the material or damaging it in any way. So that's where probably something down first, i.e. probably like the cushion carpet you can get for it. Put that down, open up, and there gives you a nice solid base. One thing I want to do is actually then kind of bring the awning as close as possible to the rail. The reason I'm kind of doing this again is trying to reduce the overall strain of going into the rail and directly up. So what I'm going to do is kind of just pull the fabric over towards the rail itself. I've kind of flipped the front over just to make life a little bit easier with myself. And then depending on your rail size, there actually is two size beading, sort of cater or beading on there as well. So we always kind of recommend going into using the bigger one of the two if you can. Now it depends on obviously your Caravan. You probably know Caravan best. Sometimes you find that sometimes you have a little bit of a midpoint where you can sort of feed it directly into it. So what I'm just going to do is just work our way around the fabric. Slowly do it bit by bit. You can sometimes almost track it back on itself as well. And just again, pull the fabric a little bit closer. Just keeping it moving at all times. There are some sort of awning pulleys on the market, which you can look to go for. If you do find you're kind of catching a bit too often, that's where probably a second pair of hands is. What I'm going to do is get my colleague Dan to come in, just give us a bit of a hand. Two people just makes life a little easier because you have one person can directly feed it into the rail and one person actually pulling it across. So that's where kind of teamwork makes a big point to call. So if I just pull, give a bit of tension on the top section as well, and basically all I'm going to do is just kind of just very slowly give a bit of tension with it and just kind of edge it in. Because what you find then is just allowing that fabric to slide nice and neatly through. What you can look to do as well is if you have some silicone spray, just to kind of ease it into the rail. Makes life a lot easier as well, and it can almost go on kind of like butter in that way. If you find sometimes you get it trapped, you almost need to get a bit of a pull back to itself before pulling it through again. So that can always be quite a challenging thing. Go back to yourself a little bit, Dan. You pull up to you a bit more. Pull it to you a little bit. Put it down a set. Now come through again. So it's going working its way slowly through. There is an eyelet point there as well, so you can kind of make sure you kind of pull directly through that. Okay, we're going to get slowly there now, nearly there. Once you get to a certain point, what you can always do again is just make sure, what I do is firstly just bring this fabric a little bit closer out towards me a little bit, just so we're not going to gather too much against it. We've still got a bit to go, so we'll keep on feeding it through nice and neatly. Go back your way a little bit, Dan. That's it. Back to me again. Perfect, okay. So I'm fair, then we'll just make sure we're kind of even on both sides now, and make sure we're looking quite happy. What you're looking for is the top beam, for example. So here, we're not too bad. We'll probably come down a little bit actually, we've probably gone a little bit too far. Just making sure it's panels on the edge. Ideally, when you're looking, you want to get the beam near enough on the corner or there or thereabouts. It's always worth checking when you look down here as well. If you were to kind of peg this down, how far off or how high off from the side panel are we? So, if anything, I probably pulled it a little bit back too far. So, again, it's just that, just making sure you're nice and stable either side to start with. Probably about there would be about right. So once we're in this position, we've kind of got a position. What we can always do as well is look to basically inflate it from this point. And then look how it sits on the actual caravan itself. So with inflation, what you want to do is basically there's 2 deflation points at either side of the actual awning. So we're just going to turn those isolation valves off and then grab our single inflation point, which is at the front. Now, we're going to make sure the bottom one tap is kind of closed off, and we've got our inflation point nice and easily accessed. I also like the idea of just making sure that none of the guy lines for any reason are kind of tangled in the base of the feet. I'm not going to peg anything down just yet. I mean, to be fair, if it is a windy day, you can just put a couple of pegs in there just to kind of keep it ship shape, but we'll just quickly grab our pump. So for this, I'm just going to use an electric pump to do a lot of the work for me. This one in particular, you get a pump supply with it. So I'm just going to basically run it onto a battery pack, just to kind of keep it neat and tidy. So onto the inflate. So the recommended pressure for the actual awning itself is actually basically 9 psi. Really, I would say once you get to around about sort of 3 or 4 psi, it will kind of pop up into shape. So you can let it do that quite nice and neatly. Set it off to do its thing. Sit back, get yourself a drink or something to relax with. Keep the frisbee throwing. And just kind of enjoy it from here, really. So, I'll just sit down. Lie down. Lie down now. There we go. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll kind of play this out. Most likely in around about 3 or so minutes, we'll have a kind of a good sort of volume in the actual tube itself. So what you'll find is it will kind of start to create a bit of a shape. At this point here, we can kind of go in and pop it in place, and if need be, actually start zipping panels in just to kind of speed that whole process up itself, really. So actually, go lie down. Yeah, so just bear with us for a little bit. So, kind of a bit more expression now. What we'll look at doing is just making sure we are. So, we're running about 3 or 4 psi. So at this point now, we can just pull this into shape. So this is a perfect point just to make sure we're kind of in line with everywhere. We're sitting kind of roughly where we want to be. Immediately, if it's kind of on the windy kind of front, we can look to do some with it. Again, making sure we're apexing is looking nice and smart. Pegging points are at the right sort of points here. So again, that's bang on where we want to be. At this point here, what we can now look to do is actually start zipping in the side panels. Just because the frame's going to hold itself, if you have got a bit of a wind, it's probably recommended you, oh, I thought we'd do that, was that side there? What I recommend you do is put some extra guide points on it, just to kind of lash it in position. Just makes that life a little bit simpler when you're putting it all together. With the zips, you want to make sure that you kind of pull the fabric up towards the zip, so you're not overstraining them. Again, you can pick and choose depending on where you want your side door to be, on how far and out that necessarily comes. So what we've got here, panel. I'm pretty sure that's for the side panel, and then that must be the front panel. So typically it comes in kind of 2 bags as well. So I believe the front panels are in this bag at the front here. Like I said, that front section is still making it sound really nice and solid, nice and rigid, and we're just going to carry on the whole kind of pitching process. So, front panel, one side's going to be higher than the other, which is that one. So, again, we're just going to work our way around, popping the zip nicely and neatly into it. Now, depending on whether you want to use like a veranda kind of style with the zips, you want to kind of engage it on both sides. I always find at this point here, it's better to zip the panel in completely. And at a later date, put that in. So there you go. So we're now officially pumped to 9 psi. So that can kind of come off. We'll put that to the side next to our lovely seated chair. And then we'll just zip this last panel in before we start to look to just tweak and peg it kind of as we go, without completely shadowing the dog. There's 2 zips is also worth mentioning on here as well. So the external zip is designed for additional mesh panels, whereas the sort of the bigger zip, the chunkier zip on the inside, again, is designed for the actual main panel itself. The reason we're zipping the panels in before we've pegged it out is to make sure we're not oversplitting the panels at all, and keeps it all really nice and tidy. And with the mud flaps, they're designed to go on the inside as well. There's a Velcro point, so we'll have a look to do that in a second. Okay, so we've now basically got our last panel zip in, so we'll just quickly do that. Again, same sort of thing. Nice and work the zip onto the section itself. Keep it really neat and tidy. Not have to worry too much about that itself. And wicked. So we're on nice and neatly there. So now what we'll look at is just look at how it's going to pitch and sit. So the first thing I want to do is basically on the back corners is just make sure we're nice and snug against the Caravan. Just get it sort of sitting as we should. Now you're looking for those orange tags which are located kind of here. These are the ones you want to make sure. Now, obviously, we're into the rail so far at the point located here, but we're just going to basically kind of peg that down, keep it really quite and tight to the vehicle itself. Ideally, all the pegs want to go in at a 45-degree angle, just to make sure. Now, again, with the pegging points, I would always kind of have it on probably its furthest point out, just because then you haven't got to re-peg it when you want to tighten it. Naturally, the pegging points will kind of give it a little bit of slippage over time, and then again we'll do the same on this other side here. So again, get the same principle, get it nice and neatly in there as well. What I will do actually is I'll just do the internal one as well, just to make sure we've got enough overlap with it, so it's still sitting as it should do. Perfect. So now we've done the back two corners, we'll do the front two corners again. Ideally, we want to keep these dead square with ourselves, pulling against one another. You'll see also again it's the orange tabs that goes in there, expanded out as far as it will kind of go, and we're kind of pulling away from the Caravan, outwards that way, and again away from ourselves. And we want to create basically a perfect straight line pretty much along this front section. Again, put the peg in the 40-degree angle and go straight up. Naturally, what you'll find is this beam will want to kind of shift forward. Now, what you've got to do to try and avoid that is there's an extra pegging point located at the bottom, and we're just going to kind of just make sure that it retains from that from going too far out. So again, same sort of thing, we're going to pull it out and away from another. You can re-peg this, it's just to give it a real nice sort of basis to start with. And so the next point we want to make sure we do is there's an orange tab, a little orange triangle at the bottom of there. Again, what we're trying to do is basically pull this back. This is designed to kind of stop that front beam from protruding too far further forward. So I, in many ways, would personally try and get this dead straight, is almost peg this back section, peg this front beam down. So we actually want to kind of sit forward. That actually lowers the roof, so we want to make sure it's actually pegged directly in, keeping that straight line neatly. As soon as that starts to come forward, the roof dips. It means it's not as good for drainage. So the water is not going to fall off the awning as you want it to. That's where these kind of two orange triangles, like I said, in the corners, really pin that back in to keep it neat and tidy there. So at this point here, we can then look to do the rest of the pegging points. Now, again, if it's a windy day, what I'd probably recommend doing is just do the webbing storm straps, just to give it a bit more bounce and braces. One point will peg out the base as well as the main part as well, and there's also a tension point. Now with these, you're looking to kind of bring these naturally a bit further forward, or sort of, well, kind of more off the side actually, to be fair. The triangle point, you want to make sure it's kind of dead straight, so it's not got a crease in it. It's really quite nice and easy. Again, you can tension that as you need to. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go work through the front panel and then do the sides. Now, like I said, the front skirt itself is designed to be tucked underneath. So we're going to feed that underneath it. There's a Velcro patch as well for that to go under, just to make sure it's sitting properly. With the panels itself, what I always recommend doing is you want to almost cross-peg them. So the corner point here will go outwards, again getting tension sort of outwards like so. Again, it's much easier, I will say, pegging it into like the grass rather than anything else. And with the front points, we're going directly down. So it's again forcing it down. You don't want to kind of again come too far out. Really, it's just giving tension directly down to the actual awning itself. Again, we'll try to keep that straight line across the whole front section of it. And depending on if you use the door, this last one here, I kind of give a little bit more of a pull that way, just so then it actually takes a lot of the strain off that sort of front zip. It's also worth mentioning I use my own pegs this as well, rather than the official ones that come with the awning, just to save the official pegs getting dirty for this, obviously just as one-off sort of pitching video. With the side ladders and things like that, I always recommend crossing them over. The reason you're going to cross them over, again, keeping the peg going at a 45-degree angle, is that it helps to bring the zip together. So when you zip and open and close it, it means there's less weight on the actual zip, making it easier to undo and do the door back up. And again, generally gives a bit of a better strength as well. Again, with something like that, so it's the side doorway like with here, I'm always pegging it a little bit back this way, just so it kind of gives, when this door's open, it's still retaining a lot of strength, and a lot of strength, yeah, a lot of tension still on that overall doorway. So what we'll do now is we'll do this pegging point here. I'd always recommend, like I said, having the pegging points further out as possible as you can, just because you can always tension it as you go. Again, we'll flip the, so we'll make sure there's a Velcro patch on the underside of here. So that skirt, we're just going to put that directly underneath. Again, feed that underneath it as well, just so it sits properly. Again, Velcro pad. I think it just gives it a better look, like a bit more of a sharper finish. Plus the fact that actually with the PVC, it's a bit more harder wearing. So again, it makes that life a little bit easier on that front. Again, we're going to tension the panel, so we're going to do the corners of the front panel either side to start with. And then we're going to do the middle bit to get tension. And just work with it. I think probably there's more time you spent pegging it out than you do anything else. Naturally, with the electric pump you obviously get with it, makes life a bit easier. Sit back and let you go. I mean, just sits really well. And then we've got the side panel to do now. Of course, if you're looking to add annexes or anything to it, you can always do that as well. So that's always worthwhile bearing in mind that you can sort of zip the annexes on as and when you need to. Keeping it properly tied up. And the annex, of course, can go on either side. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So my last one, and no means least, we've just got two storm straps which brace it across the width. The only thing that gives it its main kind of belts and braces onto it. So we can clip that in there and then come out from there. Again, these I would recommend having almost as far out as possible you can go, depending on your pitch size, just because it just helps to give a lot more extra tension into it. And just kind of hunkers it all down to make it look really nice. Again, you've still got that tension, ability of tension as you need. Other way around. And then we're good to go. So we're up, we're inflated, we're happy. Looks really smart, looks really solid. We're pretty darn robust, got the canopy looking great, blinds are down, panels are in, and we're ready to sort of set up and just do our sort of last bit of kind of put down the carpet if we want to do that, overlap it with the ground sheet, and just kind of give that last little finishing touches really. So that's kind of how we're looking to pitch the residence. What we'll do now is move on to packing it away. So let's move on to packing away the residence awning. So what we almost do is sort of the same thing we were doing pretty much just in reverse. So what we'll do is start by removing pretty much the side panels. So we'll unpeg and sort of unzip those as we kind of go and just work our way around itself. I'd probably leave, depending on the weather itself, is leave the kind of webbing storm straps in place the last point. If you are getting sort of windy or weather from a certain direction, just means it gives a bit more stability with the whole awning itself. And again, see the wind's just picked up a little bit now. So again, we'll just unpeg as we go. Naturally, if you are on grass, it makes life a lot easier, of course. We all know the burden of those sort of hard standing pitches. And just will unzip panel by panel. Lovely, lovely. Key thing is I like to ideally kind of keep the carpet in place, just so you know kind of it gives you something that's clean and dry to fold up on. But like I said, for the purposes obviously of the video itself, didn't quite use that luxury, so instead we'll just kind of fold it into sections. This is where, again, a second pair of hands probably makes life a lot simpler and easier. But everything we're going to do in this video is really show you kind of how to manage the old airflow of the awning itself, make life simpler for you rather than harder. Okay, so again, just do the pegging points. By doing this, again, you're constantly in control of what's going on. You're not worrying about, you know, a panel going here or there. It's kind of all bit by bit, part by part. Have I gone the wrong way on that? I think I might have been. No, I'm okay. There are, because there's sort of 2 zip pullers per panel, one thing you do find is you'll make sure you're going the right direction. Naturally, you can find you can always go from one to a dead end if need be. Again, things like the curtains and stuff, you can sort of remove those if you want to, or of course, keep them in place. I always personally, with the panels, myself, I like to sort of fold them in half to start with. I've lined it up somewhat. And at this point here, I find it's easier to sort of fold them in half. Again, so you kind of go outside to outside and then in sort of about a bag shape width. Because the front panels come in a sort of, well, front and sides if need be, depending on how much you can fit in, comes in its own kind of separate bag. The crucial thing is also making sure that your folds and everything are the correct length to the bag. Otherwise you find yourself in a potential spot of bother. There we go. Not the first row. Now I always find you struggle to get completely everything, the whole panel itself, all the side panels in that one bag. So I tend to fit almost the front panels in the one bag itself, and then the main sort of side panels in the main body bag. For me, it also gives you the flexibility that there's loads more space in the main body bag for the awning and so you haven't got to worry about that. There's nothing worse than trying to cram too much into one thing. So again, like with side panels, what we'll just do is just lay that on the flat part of the bag itself. Again, stops the bag from running away. Again, keeps us all in control of everything else. Again, unpeg. And then, like I said, by having the storm straps in place, we're still fully Not worrying about the wind coming. If we get a little gust, that's the thing. It's not so much actually the constant wind, it's more the little gusts you tend to get. That tends to probably be the biggest bugbear or the biggest sort of potential damage area for the awning. Now, what I want to do now is I'm basically going to deflate the valve itself. So we've got isolation taps or deflation taps at the bottom. You want to make sure that all of the valves, isolation valves internally, are kind of fully open. Nothing worse than getting an air sort of stuck in one position or the other. We'll let that slowly deflate. That gives us the opportunity to undo our remaining kind of pegging points. If you want to, you can kind of leave the main four corners pegged in back, well, sort of the front two at least anyway. But for the time being, I find I'm just going to take it out. The reason I prefer that is because as the air kind of deflates, it kind of pulls itself back in towards the Caravan. And depending on how particular you want to be, you can always then use it like, almost like a bit of a pat down situation. Storm straps I always like to take off and just have them sort of stored in the bag separately. Just then we can add it on the last piece of the puzzle. There's one less thing to get sort of tangled up in amongst it all as well. So now it's a good opportunity just to make sure that all the panels are kind of sort of fully removable. So you can worry about that. That's always a way. Just double check you've not missed a pegging point or two. It can be very common. Nothing worse than trying to slide it out the rail, for example, and find out you're still sort of pegged in somewhere. Perfect. I think we're okay. Yeah, wicked. So now what we can do is slide out the rail again. It's not quite the same strenuous part of feeding into the rail. You can just kind of give it a gradual sort of pull out. The key thing is to make sure you get a good strong grip hold on where it's going. I always kind of like to almost like kind of cave myself into it a bit. Just kind of pull it down, holding the kind of the cader point itself and pulling it through. One thing I will do actually is I'll kind of pull the excess out away from the awning, just otherwise it's not getting sort of too overly tangled. It's always like a dream packing it down. That's one thing people say to me is that, you know, packing down's harder in a pitch, and I'll say definitely not. I do find it much easier, and using kind of the method of managing the airflow does make life a lot simpler and easier. So what I'm doing now is I've moved it onto the roof. I said this is where having a carpet still remaining down just protects everything from kind of getting sort of pulled around or muddy or mucky. So we're just onto its roof section itself. Just going to use that as our main kind of point to fold it. Now, I will say the instructions have a different version of what I'm about to do, which, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't agree with. I personally prefer my method. So I find it's much easier to monitor the airflow itself. So we're on the roof section itself. What you can then do is look for where the storm strap point is on the side. Give that a bit of a yank, so we're looking there. Now, what I recommend doing at this point here is kind of fold the sides slightly in. Fold the sides in. With the legs, for example, you're looking to kind of have the legs brought almost internally, or kind of back on itself a little bit. Again, we'll bring that across. The reason we're doing that is because we're not then creating a fold and trapping the air anywhere particular. By having it sideways, as we kind of see in a second, as we kind of fold towards the middle, naturally we're pushing all that internal air that might be possibly left in the tube towards kind of the sort of deflation valves. And we're just going to sort of work our way across. Again, that's where I said the second pair of hands to make things a bit simpler. Each time we're going to kind of fold it. Just got to kind of give a little bit of a press down as well. Just again, so any internal air naturally is being forced down from the top of the awning to the front. So we're going to stop currently in the middle section there. And then we'll work the way around. Again, so almost working the air towards the middle valve. And because we've kind of kinked the feet in at the base, naturally coming towards the middle as well. So we're still allowing air to flow towards the middle section. If that frisbee's in the middle, I'm not going diamonds for it. Again, just going to give a little bit of a pat down as we go. All we're doing is just working our air out towards the front of the tube. Last fold, there he is. And again, same thing, we're just going to give it a last little pat down. Don't really need to if I'm being perfectly honest with you, but you can see how much kind of extra air is left in there. Now the trick here really is to bring the bag directly round to where the base of it is. That way we're going to go roll it straight into the bag. And with the extra bit of kind of tag point there, we're going to roll that and just put it underneath it. The reason we're doing that is because as we kind of roll it through, naturally we're pushing the air out towards the valve itself. But more importantly, when we come to finish our roll, our little tie is in the perfect position, ready just to tie it around the actual awning itself. Again, try and keep your weight directly over the top of it. Because what we're trying to do is sort of, again, push and squeeze the air out by giving it kind of a slow sort of roll. Air just kind of gradually comes out of it as we go. And at this point, because our tie should in theory be in the correct place, we can just tie that up, do a little bow in it, and then we're sitting already on top of our bag, so I haven't got to worry about moving that as well. Because again, little things like that just make life a hell of a lot simpler. And then we've got plenty of room to spare. So we go, easy, in the bag go. We've got the compression straps as well, just kind of compress it a little bit more. But that's kind of how you're going to basically pitch and pack the actual resonance itself. What you can actually look at doing is follow the link below this video. It'll take you straight through the website. We've got more information on the product itself. There's a separate review video on there as well you can check out. But in principle, easy to perch up and down by one, stroke two people for the pitching side of things. But back in the bag with plenty of room to spare. Yeah, hopefully it's been helpful. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next Attwoolls Outdoors tutorial videos or review videos.